Welcome, George.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on the show.
I love that you're touching on issues that like kind of like the elephant in the room, that people stay away from. And I've gotten into trouble on Facebook the last couple of days for standing up for something, but I think that there's just not enough people. People try to sweep things under the carpet and hope they'll go away, and they don't go away. So I applaud you for bringing these films to the surface. And
I will refine or leave my opinions to the film itself. And even in those, it's not always my opinion. It's the opinion of experts that know a lot more than I do. And so as a filmmaker, I try to tell the story, but I try not to push my opinion on people because you need to watch it and form your own opinion.
You've had a long history of, with film and as a newscaster, a sportscaster, weathercaster, like this massive big, history in front of the camera and behind the camera and producing that. How did you get into that area?
Well, when I was in college, I originally thought I wanted to go to law school, but I quickly realized I wasn't that smart. and I certainly was not a great student. So I went to the next thing that I thought I had a skill set for. That was communication and wanting to be on television. So I got into the television news business. And back when I did this, because I'm absolutely as old as I look, that was when in the media when you weren't allowed to give your opinion. Nobody really cared what your opinion was. Your job was to tell the news or to tell the weather or to give the sports. It's evolved so much now into opinion-driven news. You tell me a news channel, I can tell you what they stand for and what they believe in.
Yeah.
And it didn't used to be that way. I don't need grandstanding and opinions. I want to be able to watch the news. Yeah. And so I'm glad I'm not in that business anymore. So then I went into a business which is kind of the opposite of that, where you are telling stories and you kind of need to take a position or stand for something. And that's making documentary films.
Well, you've now formed your own company, Move the World Films, which is fantastic. What's behind that name, and like what's the driving force behind it?
Well, when I was growing up, my dad used to always have this expression by Archimedes, where he would say, "Give me and he called it a lever. Some people say lever big enough, and I could move the world." And I thought, moving the world, maybe that's what we want to try to do with a film. And it might not be taking the world and completely moving it and putting it someplace else. But with that lever, as you're cranking on it, do you just get a little movement out of it? Does it just move a little bit? And you start to get people's attention, and maybe they start to follow what you're saying and what you happen to have a passion for. And maybe it opens their eyes to where it actually makes a difference. And somebody told me in the last few weeks that, if you could just affect one person, and then another person, because when you try to, a lot of times when you're young and you're trying to make a film or do a project, you're trying to make it for everybody. And you really think you can just set the world on fire, and you aim so big that you really end up speaking to nobody. You just the idea just is out there. Yeah. But if you can affect a few people at a time and make a difference, it's a good feeling. Bless you.
Thank you.
You're going to edit that out? Or is that going to be in the show?
I don't know. I'll probably edit it out, but who knows? Okay. Also, sometimes we measure ourselves by how many people we can change or how much we can change. But I say you've only got to impact one person. And if you've impacted one person's life and something changes for the better, that's a success. That's massive. And I love the leverage kind of aspect you've put on that, and it's so true, isn't it? It's kind of like, and if you imagine that big boulder that you're talking about and just moving it, eventually it rolls, eventually it gathers its own snowball. And I love it.
And for anybody that watches the film, if you go watch The Last House Standing, which is on our website, thelasthousestanding.org, our logo is animated for the beginning of the film, where you actually see them move the world. And that was something I really wanted to have made for the project. So it's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Did you, when you were working before in the news, like with the, corporations and the media companies and all that, did you have a desire to start your own independent film company back then? Or was there something that sort of triggered you into sparking that whole movement off?
Well, when you're in the business, if you make it to a certain level, you're getting paid pretty well. And so it's hard to really think beyond that, because you don't really want to walk away from that kind of money. But I got fired. So it made it easy for me. It's like, whoa, I better reinvent myself quickly and find out what else I can do. And I really prefer being behind the camera to being in front of the camera, because too much BS comes with having to be in front of the camera. You know, you're told what to do a lot of times. You're criticized all the time. And if you're behind the scenes, you can kind of lay in the weeds. You know, you don't walk. You walk into a room, people are going to know you for who you are, not that they recognize you from something. And you know, when you're in television news, you're not that big a star. It's not like celebrities that can't go anywhere, because people generally treat newscasters pretty good. But it's just I prefer to be anonymous.
Yep. Oh, I love it. I love it. And well, so you've got two films, Licensed to Parent and Last House Standing. So let's start with Licensed to Parent, because that was the first one that you come out with. Now, I've watched the shorts on that, and your trailer. I haven't seen the full film yet, but there, you know, that where that woman was blowing smoke in the kid's face, and it was like, oh my God. And I thought, what's so sad is that happens all the time, that kind of treatment. And you said, I'm going to quote you here, we need a license to drive, catch a fish, open a business, and even get married. But one of the most important jobs in the world requires no licensing or certification at all. You know, that's quite, it's quite kind of obvious, but profound and really thought-provoking, isn't it?
It is, because if you think about it, I don't think most people really think about everything that's behind being a parent. And anybody that's capable of reproducing can call themselves a parent. Having the baby is not being a parent. That's just bringing a life into the world. The parenting is what you do from the moment you leave the hospital for the rest of that child's life. It's a full-time 24/7. As they get a little older, you can back off a little bit, but it's a lot of work. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And so somewhat provocative to put having a child in the same category with fishing and driving and all those things, because those are different. They're judged differently by the law than having a child. But the reality is, the only thing that the hospital cares about when you have that baby that they really follow up on is they walk out to the car to make sure you have the car seat put in properly. And I don't even know if they're still doing that today. They did it back when, you know, my daughter's now 11. So you're really on your own. And what I ask people is, if you had to take a test to see if you were qualified to be a parent, do you think they would have given you that kid? And I bet there's a lot of people, they would say, no, this person shouldn't have a child. And we see it in the news all the time of horrible examples of parenting. Yeah. And it just is mind-boggling to me. Now, would we ultimately truly license people to be parents? That's not really what the film is about. It's more about supporting parents and helping them do a better job. But the reality is, most places don't. And when you raise a bad child, everybody can stand on, hey, it's my rights. I can do what I want, depending on what country you live in, how free you think you are. But the reality is, once that child leaves your house, you've inflicted that person on the world, on society. So if they go out and do a lot of bad things, it's on you. Yeah. And, you know, we see examples of that daily. It's unbelievable how bad parenting can be.
No, 100%. I see a lot of, particularly mothers and daughters, you know, but she's my best friend. You know, I'm doing everything with my daughter. She's my best friend. I don't know. I've got a real gripe about that, because I just think you're not on this planet to be your kid's best friend. You're there to guide them so that they become functional adults and they have a happy life. You know, and they're not inflicting harm on other people, and that they can fit within society, and they can be resilient, and they can, I don't know.
I think it was Michael Douglas had a line in the movie Wall Street where somebody said they needed a friend. And he goes, if you need a friend, get a dog. Yep. You know, that's what a friend, if you're a parent and you're saying, I want to be friends with my child, I'm going to come out and say you're a crappy parent. That's the reality, because that's not what parenting is. Now, once your child is in their 20s, the relationship changes, where you can be out having a beer with them and they can say what's on their mind and you can say what's on yours. And it's a different level of communication. But when that child is in its growing years, you're not their friend. And anybody that thinks they are is really doing a disservice, because you can't do that job and be their friend. There's too many challenges. sometimes you got to put your foot down, and it's not a democracy. You're in charge. I tell my kids that all the time. You live in my house. You're using my things. You're going to follow my rules. Now, I'm not waving a flag like I'm a great parent. If I had to grade myself on a daily basis, I'd be a C or D parent on many of the things that I do. So I'm not on a perch preaching to you.
Yeah.
I welcome support. If somebody has ideas how I can do my job better, please bring it on. I'm all ears.
Well, when you were making the film, were there any stats that truly shocked you? That you just weren't expecting?
Some of the things we came across, and it's been a few years, so I don't have the stats fresh in my brain, but the amount of children that are abused, the amount of children that are from divorced families, sadly, the amount of children that have tried to take their own life. And I've interviewed kids that have tried to do that. And when you look into their eyes, I mean, it makes me tear up right now thinking about it. It's such a painful thing that their life is so bad that they think of ending it, and that's a solution for them. And it's just heartbreaking. And those are the things, that's the toughest aspect of making it. When you talk to a kid whose parents were abusing him and who's in foster care and who's getting abused, I mean, it's just heartbreaking because the child's innocence is stolen when that happens, and it affects them for the rest of their lives. And so while you can't be a child's friend, I don't believe, you have to protect them.
Yeah.
And if you're in a community and you know something like that's going on with a child, people say, well, stay out of it, mind your own business. If you know something like that's going on, you got to tell the authorities. You got to step in and help, because we all need to help. We need to look out for children. We can't let these things keep happening.
Did you feel helpless or hopeless? Like were you filming and just thinking, oh my God, I wanted to share this story. I wanted to share this sort of raise awareness to this issue. But now I feel like, what's the point? This is such a hopeless, helpless situation. Or did you feel encouraged that you had the skills?
Yeah, I would say encouraged.
Yeah.
Encouraged, because we met people that cared and were trying to do something about it. So when we were up in Minnesota, we met people that they had a program to support parents and help educate them. In San Antonio, we met people that ran an organization that helped parents get through the difficult times and enabled them to be better at doing their jobs. We met a judge who got kids out of those bad situations and tried to punish the parents who were bad, and the ones that were able to get their lives back together were able to connect with their children again. So you saw signs of hope, but you still see all the bad stuff too, which is very difficult, because I believe we have to be very protective of children. But I'm hopeful. Unfortunately, at least in this country, I'm not sure how it is where you are, nothing really gets done on a day-to-day basis that makes things better. It's really up to us to make them better, because the people we vote for, whatever party you're in, they're in it for themselves. So nobody's looking out for us. We kind of have to do it ourselves.
Yeah. I think we're in a slightly better position than you are in America, but I've noticed over the years our judicial system is declining no end. There's no consequence. It's kind of like, you murdered someone, did you? Oh, well, I'll give you 2 years. And if you're good, you can get out in 3 months. And it's just, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's just kind of like the justice isn't there for what people have done.
Yep. And we are not going to go down that rabbit hole, because that would get me into those things where, I'll piss a lot of people off that might like me. But I agree with you. I think that, nobody should get a pass for criminal behavior. Nobody should get a pass for things that inflict bad things on society and on other people. They shouldn't. Period. No matter who you are, no matter what your excuse is, there's rules. You got to follow them. Period.
Yeah. So where do you think we've gone wrong in society? After doing this film, did you just sit back and think, I know where we've gone wrong?
Yeah, I don't think that people take the job of parenting seriously enough in that particular film. I think that most people truly have no idea what they're getting into. And then you have one child, then you have two, then you have three. It doesn't just get a little more difficult with each one. You go from having to play man-to-man defense to zone, right? You're outnumbered. And once they start, there's too many moving parts. I joke that nobody should have more than 2 children. And, I have 5 that I'm responsible for. And then when they find that out, they go, okay, then it's okay for him to say that. We don't have to hate him. But, it's insane. So I don't think we take it seriously enough. Yeah. And I don't think that society does enough supporting of parents. You know, if you're in the supermarket and a baby's screaming, what do? You look at the mom like, what's the matter with you? Shut your kid up. You don't know what she's going through. You don't know that could be the lowest point of her day. And sometimes just a smile and say, it's okay, you know, it just is enough to maybe help that moment. But we scorn, you know, and you know, when you see parents that let their kids race around in cars or stay out late throwing wild parties and everything, it's like, wow, just an accident waiting to happen and inflicting pain on society.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a shame, isn't it? Because when, you know, you seem to be about the same age as me. Now, I'm not having to go at your age. You look very young and dignified, but it's, I'm 58. So we're probably sitting, you know, around the same era.
You would be my younger sister.
Okay. Well, let's just say we're the same age, right?
Okay.
But when we were kids, you know, you were out and about on the streets, and you know, you were in your neighbors' houses, and all the kids were gathering, you know, and we weren't hurting anybody. We were just riding our bikes and, you know, just playing together, and you were at this next door's house and the next door's house and up the road, and you were off on your bikes, and you know, everybody was looking out for everybody back then. You know, all the parents, if a parent would say, you know, I saw your kid down the street, you know, doing this or doing that. And that's lost now. We don't, you know, our big brick fences have come up, and we don't even know who our neighbors are half the time.
Well, and a lot of parents don't want you to say anything to them. If you say, hey, I saw little Tommy down there throwing rocks at birds, how dare you say that about my child?
Yeah.
You know, my perfect little monster who's going to be a serial killer in 2 years. You know, as a parent, the parents that I tend to like and end up being friends with are the ones that are open to the fact that their kid's not perfect.
Yeah.
That there are things they can learn. And if somebody knows my kid's misbehaving or doing something bad, I've been called by parents before, and it's like, what can I do? I'm sorry. Did my child say that? I'm going to talk to him or her. I'm not going to allow this to continue. And that's the kind of thing parents have to be open to, is just doing your job better.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So this film, it's available for free for parenting groups all over the world. And
it can be, we can make it available. I have it for rent on my website because as a filmmaker, we don't make any money.
No.
You know, you make money maybe while you're making the film, but afterwards, everybody wants you to give it to them. So if somebody had an organization or something, I would gladly make it available. I do that with The Last House Standing all the time. But you know, if you want to just watch it right now, you could go to our website and rent it. Yeah. And you know, that just throws a couple of coins at the filmmaker.
Yeah, and why shouldn't we do that? Because it's there's, you know, they keep saying there's no money in the arts, but you know, I'm an artist as well. I'm a creator as well. We just give stuff away, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, someone give me some money to put some food on. I just want to eat something decent for once instead of bread. But anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Throw a few bucks.
Yeah, throw a few bucks, but it is available. So, you know, people can rent it off your website, but it is also available, you know, for parenting groups to watch and to generate this discussion and to raise awareness, you know, of the issues and all that sort of stuff. So, no, I think it's really good. So I think we've covered it. I was going to ask you to tell us about it. I reckon we've covered. I reckon we've done a real good job, Dick, unless there's something else you want to say about it.
Well, The Last House Standing is the one that is really such a relevant topic right now, because in that film, we talk about how we as human beings live where we want to live, regardless of the risks that are associated with living there. And every year houses get wiped out and destroyed. And it's typically the same kind of situations. It's out in the woods, it burns down. It's by the beach, it gets hit by a storm surge. It's in the middle of the country, it gets hit by a tornado. And you have your own weather hazards over where you are. And people know about them, but they don't do anything about it, because we're all kind of like the accidental tourist, where you're just kind of walking around and you don't think anything bad's going to happen to you. And then when it does, it completely upends your life, where, you know, you're in survival mode because you literally have lost everything. And I've seen that story again and again and again. And it's so tragic to see. And it doesn't have to always end that way. And so we have to do a better job. So that's what The Last House Standing is about.
I know, but you've jumped way ahead of me, George. You've just, I was still talking about license to parent. And
I thought you might have been, but then I'm looking at the clock and I'm going, let's see, she booked me for an hour. So I better make sure to at least turn this a little bit because I got to get people to see that film. We're right in the middle of hurricane season. My goodness.
No, we're moving over to Last House Standing now, but yeah, this is I absolutely love this. Now, don't worry, George, I'm going to talk to you for an hour because I love chatting with you. You've got great energy. But let's go into the Last House Standing, and you've just sort of saying now about people building, not taking into account what's going on in their environment. We just had an earthquake here yesterday, which is the biggest one we've had in 250 years, and it was felt through probably half of Eastern Australia. It was quite a big one, and fortunately it didn't do much damage. But we've also had massive bushfires where half of our state was burnt out. Droughts, and then after the fire we've had flooding, and there's always going to be stuff, and it's kind of like, well, how do you build? How do you decide what's you kind of trust the building construction industry, don't you? To set
that's
you
a
up
huge
properly.
mistake. Yeah, if that's your plan, you're in trouble because those guys are businessmen and women who don't necessarily build a house that's going to last forever. They build what they think you're going to buy. Yeah. And that's a major difference. We give this example in the film. There's this thing called Hammurabi's Code in the old days, where if a builder built a house that an accident happened and it took the life of the person living in the house, the builder was put to death. Wow. And it's like the builder truly had skin in the game. Now you're lucky if you can get the guy or gal on the phone to come out and fix their crappy work. Yeah. Because they've moved on to somebody else that they're building a shitty house for. So you just never know, and there's some really good builders. I'm talking about the industry as a whole, though. They lobby to have standards not raised, because as a business, why would you want to have to build a 5-star fortress for every person? People might not want to buy it. So the premise of this film is, well, we care, I don't want you building a crappy house for me. I want you to build me a house that's going to survive the hazards, and tell me what it's going to cost to do it. Don't cut corners. Don't send the D team in that isn't putting the brackets on right, mounting the walls to the roof. Don't seal the envelope of the house properly so water gets in. Don't do wood on the second floor when you live a few blocks from the beach. There's a list of things that builders could do better, but the law doesn't require them to, so they don't do it. Yeah. So as home buyers, we're on our own there too. It's like parenting. It's kind of the same. There's a theme for the kind of stuff I like to do. And it's up to us. If we don't demand more from these guys, they're not going to give it to us. No.
Wow. And so in this film, and I 100% agree with everything, but it is due diligence, but wow. I guess we're not builders. The average person isn't a builder and doesn't understand all that. So you kind of look at a house and you think, you get up in the roof and you have a look and you think, oh yeah, this looks good. You get underneath it, you think, oh, this looks good. But in actual fact, do we even know what we're looking for? That's
no. And that's why you have to hire a professional to look. I've built a lot of houses over the years. I know what bad work looks like now. I mean, I can certainly tell you everything that every builder I've ever worked with, where they saved a nickel. I could walk you around and show you, because whatever is a boil in the building process ends up being a major boil when it's done. Yeah. Bad things don't turn out good later on. They cut a corner, you pay for it later. Yeah. We saw that with The Last House Standing in Mexico Beach, the house that was the premise for the whole film. They had one plug socket on the top floor of the patio, and the hurricane ripped a piece of the ceiling off there because it found a little gap in the ceiling. Yeah. Now, if somebody truly was watching everything, they would have caught that. And these guys did a really good job. That house is a poster child for how to build a house to survive, but they still had some things. So you really have to look at everything. And if you're building a house and the builder doesn't want you on the job site, I would run. I would make sure that you could do multiple inspections, have somebody watching and seeing. I've seen stories, I've even seen it happen, where, they have a discontented crew out there working on your house, and before they put the drywall up, they throw their garbage in the walls. Yep. And years later, when you have to tear it open for something, you find McDonald's bags and beer cans and Lord knows what else. That's horrible.
Yep.
And so, you really have to know everything that's going on, and you have to, if it costs you a little more to get an inspection, that inspection could be the difference between saving your life or not.
Yeah.
Your house is your biggest investment.
Yeah.
More expensive than a car. I guarantee you, more people are more concerned about, are there 2 airbags in my car? What'll happen if I get hit at 55 miles an hour? But they don't know diddly about their house.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. We bought this house. It's out on land. It's 11 acres, and we didn't really we still don't know where the hell the water pipes are. We asked, and it's kind of like, oh, they might be over here, over there, and we're still finding them. But it is really tough. That house you're talking about on Mexico Beach there in Florida, if you look at even the trailer even just look at the trailer of the film, and you can see this one double-story house standing there, and that, as you said, that's the premise for the film. But these, what were your thoughts when you saw that one house? And because if you look at the trailer, everything else is smashed to smithereens, and not only that, it's right on the bloody shoreline, which is shocking to me. I would never in a million years, and I don't even understand the whole building process, but I would never buy a house on a beach. I just think that's got to be a disaster anyway.
But I tell you, if you look at news stories of things that have happened in our country in the last several years, a lot of people that live nowhere near the beach have had flood damage. The people in Houston, Texas, from Hurricane Harvey, those people weren't even in a flood zone. And their lives, a lot of lives, were really ruined by a flood. So the FEMA director, Brock Long, said in our film, he goes, if it rains where your house is, it can flood. Period.
Yeah.
So your example, your house isn't anywhere near the beach. Flood insurance would be very inexpensive for you. And it's one of those things where you go, then I don't need it. Well, what happens if the storm drains back up in your neighborhood and there's some huge monsoon and all of a sudden you have 10 feet of water on your street?
Yeah.
I bet you'll be glad you have that flood insurance then, because if you flood, your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover it. Now, you think I sound like I'm not thrilled with builders. Ask me about insurance people. The stories I've heard of how they don't pay claims and make people wait, and just horrible experiences, would make you sick.
Yeah.
So just like there's good builders, there's probably good people in insurance, but as an industry, there's it's like the blackjack. You go to a casino, you can buy chips anywhere, but it's very hard to collect your money. There's usually one window in the back over on the side. And that's the way it is with insurance companies. They know how to get your money every month, but they don't really know how to give it back to you.
Yeah.
And that's really why we have insurance, to have them help us. And I've just heard too many stories about how difficult it is. This guy told me that and I don't know, I didn't check this if this number is accurate, but he said in one disaster, 75% of all claims were rejected by insurance the first time around.
Wow.
And they have an algorithm that shows that if you reject a claim, there's a percentage of people that won't file it again. That used to go on with health insurance in this country. The traveler's insurance for years was just rejecting everything. And there's a percentage of people that will never claim it again. So they save millions and millions of dollars. And that happens in insurance for homes too.
And that's so true. We were booked to go to New York in 2020, and COVID hit. And so we had to, try and get our money back. And I'm a persistent little bugger. You can imagine I'm like a Jack Russell. And they were like, no, not paying you back. And I would just send email after email after email. I can't tell you. I ended up saying to my partner, I'm making a full-time job out of this, and I'm not getting any money back. But eventually...
Did you get money back? Did you get it back?
I got all of it back, all of it, except for 2 tickets on a Greyhound bus. But the rest of it, everything, which I don't care about, that was bloody $20 or something. But all the rest of it eventually came back, and they kept saying, no, we're just going to put you in credit, and I just kept arguing. And finally I got it back. But I can imagine why most people give up, because most people would say, oh, it's only a few $1,000s, just buddy, let it go. Just let it go. It's not worth the stress.
They'll always try that kind of stuff. I had my son was signed up, or was my son or my daughter, for a camp, not this past summer, but the one before that, when COVID steamrolled us.
Yeah.
And they canceled the camp. And they said, we're going to give everybody a credit for next year's camp. And I said, no. I go, there's a pandemic. I don't even know if you're going to be around next year. And you're going to hold $1,600 of my money for a year? No, I want the money back. And they said, well, we're not giving refunds. I said, tell me where it says in here that you're not giving me the money back. Because I see that I could get a refund. And they go, well, we have administrative costs and everything. And I said, you sound like an organization that's not going to be around in a year, because you're using money for this year for next year. And if you have a problem next year, how are you going to pay your bills? Because you've used this year's money. I said, I want my money back. And I was persistent like you, and I got the money back.
Yeah.
But I bet a lot of people didn't.
No.
And, you know, that's the thing. They'll get away with what they can.
Yeah. When you were a reporter, you know, and you were out doing news stories and all that kind of stuff, like a roving reporter, not sitting at a desk, did you see a lot of disaster zones? Were you sent out to that sort of to report on that?
Yeah, I actually went to Moore, Oklahoma, which we ended up featuring in The Last House Standing, because they had 4 major tornadoes hit them over a period of time. And this was the first one. And I didn't know it at the time that I would be making this film. And I interviewed a woman who the only thing left on the slab of her property was the bathtub and the mattress that she held over her during the tornado. Everything else was wiped clean. It looked like it was new construction, everything gone.
God.
And the look on this woman's face, I mean, you can just imagine the trauma that she experienced going through that. And I said to her, why don't you have a storm cellar? And she goes, we didn't want to spend the money. And we learned making The Last House Standing that a storm cellar you can get between $3,000 and $4,000. And I know that's a lot of money to some people, so I don't want to make light of that. But if you factor that into a mortgage, which you're allowed to pay it over time, that can make the difference between living and dying. So instead of, you know, going to the lake that summer, maybe you have a storm cellar that could save you and your family. I just don't understand the choices people make. And I got to experience it in the TV news industry, and then making the film, it's the same thing. You know, I talked to a lot of people that if they had done something, it could have made it less bad for them. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Then you want to have good insurance. You know, that's the last line of defense in anything is, did you have insurance? And unfortunately, most people at the end of the year, they go, gosh, I didn't need all that insurance. Nothing happened this year. That's the wrong attitude. You can't look at insurance as, I didn't use it this year, so I'm going to take it off. Disaster eventually finds us.
Yeah.
And, you know, we found that out in Malibu. This 91-year-old gentleman, Dick Corman, that we interviewed, took the insurance off his collector old car, and it melted in the fire. And his coins and all the things that he wasn't using because he didn't think he needed it. And that's usually when you need it the most.
Wow. In Oklahoma, you know, they have tornadoes rip through there all the time. And people say, I always say, you know, ask, why would you live there? People say, we love it here. We love it here.
You know why? Because they legalized marijuana in Oklahoma. When we were in Moore, literally on every block, there was a dispensary selling pot. Every block. Because they didn't think it would pass. And it ended up getting voted for. And so there was no regulations. So you could open them everywhere. So maybe that's why they're living there. If I get stoned enough, I won't know the tornado's coming.
we won't say everyone in Oklahoma is smoking pot, but you know, it's a I don't know. I'd be terrified actually, and I'd have a shelter for sure. How did that? I can't imagine. I'm just thinking about that woman with a bathtub and a mattress she held over her. Like that defies physics to me. You know, like her house is gone, but somehow she had the strength to hold a mattress over her within a tornado. That's
well, because of the plumbing of the way a bathtub is mounted onto the slab in that particular instance, that's the only thing that saved her life. That, and you know, she was able to use that mattress, but that had to be terrifying. And some of the people we talked to in Moore for the film experienced that over the years. And then I've met some people who've never seen a tornado. You know, you watch TV and you read these stories and you go, everybody's dodging tornadoes there all the time. You must see them every day and it's no big deal. But it's not the case. I met some people that said, I've never seen one. I've never experienced that. And they're lucky. But 4 times hitting the same community. We used a clip. Do you know the movie The World According to Garp with Robin Williams?
Yeah.
Where he's looking at a house with his wife and a plane crashes into it. And he looks at his wife and he goes, honey, we'll take the house. She goes, what? He goes, do you realize the odds of a plane ever hitting this house again? They're astronomical. We'll be safe here. 4 times more got hit by tornadoes like that. And after the 4th one, they changed the building code.
Wow.
I would have taken 1 for me to change the code.
Yeah.
It took 4. And I like more. I like the people we met there, and I want nothing but the best for them. But it took a lot to make that change. And it's paid off.
Yeah.
Because the reality is the bullseye of the tornado, there's nothing you can do. If an EF5 tornado steamrolls your house, it's probably going to do a lot of damage. But the houses a half a mile left or right that are a little out of the center now have garages that don't blow in, front doors that are built better, houses that are bracketed better, so that houses around that aren't sustaining the same kind of damage. And that makes a major difference.
Wow. Wow. You don't think about it, do you? You only think about the disasters that are relevant to you. We think about bushfires all the time. So we're most of us here are very bushfire ready, as ready as you can be, you know, and we do prep coming into summer and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, if a bushfire comes through, you're screwed anyway. Like it's if it comes right over the top of you.
Do you have kangaroos punching you all the time and everything? I mean, I've never been over there. Some friends of ours lived over there for a while and just loved it. All I see on the news is that are you still locked up in your house? Are you able to get out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I live in the country, and I live on a farm, so I can get out anytime I want. No, we're still we can still travel a bit, but no, we have got a lot of rules. But we don't have pet kangaroos, and they're not hanging around kicking us in the head. Although it's serious, it is quite serious. If you come over here, you don't touch an old man kangaroo because he probably will kick your bloody head in. But
I bet. But those fires looked really scary, and it showed that a problem. You know, people talk about climate change and there's more extremes in the various weather patterns. So when we saw Australia burning, I mean, that's a scary thing to witness. And we have that here in the West, out in California. The fire after fire, just, you know, it's so hot and dry. They have such a dry winter that, or if it's wet, it creates more growth for fire season later in the year. So every place has its boils, so to speak, of what the problems can be. It's just a matter of how you prepare. So, for example, in Australia, if a huge bushfire is coming your way, sometimes there's nothing you can do. But if you have the right built house that embers can't get in the soffits of your house, and there's ways that, you know, different access points for clearing brush around there, you've increased your chances of surviving that. I'm sure not every house gets destroyed, but in light of that, you need insurance, right? You have to have a good insurance policy.
Yep. Which some of them didn't pay, but when the last, the whole bloody hell, let's don't go back down that rabbit burrow. But no. It's hard, you know. But I think that you can't, exactly what you're saying. You can't always be ready. You can't always get it right. You know, you can't. And you know, if a fire's coming and it's bigger than you can, bigger than God, you know, you just can't do anything about it. You're going to get railroaded. However, there are going to be many, many circumstances where if you do to have preparation, you are going to minimize your risk, you know, whereas it could have been much greater if you didn't do those things. So, and I think more people could do that.
And there's other things you can do too, which we learned from a woman in Malibu who wishes she had a go box in a closet with a list of things you need to take if you have to get out of your house in a hurry. Because there's some things you'll never get back. If there's a family heirloom, if there's things from your life that you know, there's a good chance you're coming back to a house that's going to be burned down. There's some crucial things you might be able to take. But you can't start planning that when you're evacuating. No. You know, Bobby Milstein, a fire expert in our film, said nobody makes their plan the day of the fire. You know, when catastrophe is happening, you're in survival mode. You could be panicking. You're just freaking out. You need to have planned how to handle that in advance.
Yep.
And that's as simple as having a list of things you want to take, knowing an evacuation route so you can get out safely, and hopefully having done things to make your house as safe as possible before. What was interesting is in Malibu, this one woman had fireproof safes in her house. 4 fireproof safes burned and melted completely.
Wow.
The only thing that survived on her property, they had imported a pizza oven from Italy. And she said, which is kind of ironic, she goes, I wish I had left my jewelry in the pizza oven because everything else melted, burned to nothing.
Wow. Yes. Well, we here in a fire zone, we all know we've all got bags ready. You know, as soon as summer comes, we all pack bags, and we always have our go to bags, and we all, and it's up everywhere. There's big signs up everywhere in summer. Do you have your bushfire plan ready? Are you, what's your plan? Are you ready? So it's kind of like it's expected that every house, I'm not saying every house does it, but it is expected that every home has a plan, and talk about it with the kids and that. But some of us do, some of us don't, but we do, and we plan where the animals are going, which fences are coming down, which gates are open. We keep our backyard watered so that it's green, so all the big animals can go in there, if there's a fire, so that they're off the paddocks. But you have to have that thought about, because if on the day you're too emotional, you're too bloody, your brain is frantic. But anyway, so over these years, you've reported disasters now. Do you think that natural disasters are becoming more frequent and more intense?
If you look at history and you look at, they were just talking on the news here recently about a hurricane that came through here I think it was the 1920s in South Florida, and it talked about the damage that was done and how bad it was. So there's always extremes. But I can tell you this, that the experts in our film say climate change is real and it's creating more extremes in what happens with our weather. So for example, late season hurricanes, where they can travel in warmer water up the Atlantic coast and affect other parts of the country, or they form in the Caribbean because the water is so warm later into the year. It's really dry out in the West. It's warmer, hotter, drier. So the fires get worse. In the spring, the extremes of cold and hot, that's ripe for tornado season, that contrast in air masses. So tornadoes appear to get worse. So the experts believe that climate change has had an effect on the extremes that are happening in our weather and the severity of it. And then you factor that in with people doing what they want, not thinking anything bad's going to happen, and just live anywhere. We had an expert in our film, Henk Ovink, who's from the Netherlands, and he's a gentleman who President Obama brought in to help after Hurricane Sandy and get everything back together in the Northeast. And he was telling us how in the Netherlands, there's places they don't let you live. If an area is deemed to be a flood zone and it can't be saved, they're not going to let you build a house there. They make you move somewhere else.
Yeah.
Gosh, can you imagine doing that in the United States? People here will argue about whether or not to wear a mask. They'll argue about, whether or not they can smoke and blow smoke in your face. Good luck telling them to move away from the flood area. They're going to do what they want until it floods, and then they're on the roof crying for somebody to rescue them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, go figure.
Oh, look, we have it here too. They build housing estates on swamps. They just load it up with dirt and then build houses. But the point is, over time, wherever that water came from in the first place, it's going to come back. It's going to start bubbling up again, and you're buggered.
Yeah, when I grew up, a lot of my younger years in Southern California, and there's an area there in Marina del Rey, which is kind of near the airport, and they would say this whole area was a flood area and you can't build there. It's now fully developed with apartments and office buildings in a flood area. Yep. Also, there's areas that are built on ground that isn't solid. It's not rock. So it's the worst place to build for an earthquake, and it's all developed. So we may think we know what the potential risk is, but once money is put down and wow, we can develop that. And our expert on earthquakes in the film said when the major earthquake hits LA or San Francisco, over half the buildings will be uninhabitable.
Wow.
They will not. That's staggering to think about. An area as large as Los Angeles or San Francisco, and say half of the buildings won't be able to be lived in anymore. That's insane. And we know how to build them better. They do it in other countries. They do it in Japan. But in the United States, they can get away with not doing it, so they don't do it. And eventually that's going to hit, and it's going to be a catastrophe.
So they've already had one big one. Like there's been one big one through up that side through LA and San Francisco. I can't remember when that was, 2000 I don't know. It was early 2000s.
Well, one of them was in '89 during the World Series. I was at the ball game between the A's and the Giants. I was on the top deck of Candlestick Park. I thought we were going to die. I thought it was just frightening how much that stadium was shaking. And I've been in some big earthquakes. I would never live in California again. They're probably going, good, we don't want you back there. But I'm scared to death of earthquakes. At least a hurricane you see coming, you can prepare. You're just sleeping, or you're driving under an overpass, and an earthquake can hit, and you're finished.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and one other thing, we rip the news media. You'll love this. Every year when I was working in San Francisco, and every time there was a tsunami warning, they would send a news crew down to the beach to cover it. Think about how incredibly stupid that is. And what moron back in the newsroom, news director, is thinking, hey, this is a good idea. Well, let's send Johnson down there. And then if there's a major tsunami, we'll get video just as he's getting wiped out. I mean, it's like, that's what that business is. Look at the guys at the Weather Channel. I love those guys. I'm riveted to it when it happens. The Jim Cantoris and Stephanie Abrams. I watch those guys religiously. But that's insane to be out in that kind of weather.
Yeah.
It's only, how come a street signs never smack them and knock them over, or they get blown over? It's just crazy. I admire what they do because it's riveting television and they're really good at it. But think about how crazy that is to risk your life like that.
Yeah, but the news has become more entertainment than anything, hasn't it? It really has. It's anything to get people glued to that bloody screen.
Well, maybe that's why I didn't last, because when the news director used to say there's a hurricane coming, we want to send you down to the coast, I would say, common sense tells me if the storm's coming from that direction, I'm going the other way. I'm not going towards the storm. You're not paying me enough for that. That's insane. Send the morning guy out there. I don't want to go out there.
I love it. I love it. So this I still want to go to this house on Mexico Beach just before we get off this topic. But why was that house so good? Like what was it about that house? I know you say it was better building and that sort of stuff, but was it double? I don't know. Why was that house so good?
Well, when they talk about that house, a lot of houses build to code. He exceeded the code. He wanted to know, not building to code, what do I have to do to survive the hazards that could actually happen here?
Yeah.
And there's a major difference. Yeah. That some neighborhoods, the code might be, and even, and this is insane, Mexico Beach raised their wind rating. It was 130 miles an hour that you had to build for. But a lot of the structures that were there were from way before that happened. So they were at a really low code. And they only raised it to 140 miles an hour. But if the storm that wiped them out was like 165 miles an hour and storm surge of 10 or 15 feet, maybe higher. And so they didn't even change the code enough to survive if that storm hit again. This particular house has pylons that go, I think, 30 something feet into the ground. And the way they had a breakaway staircase so it couldn't pull the house with it, the way they had the roof bracketed on, the kind of windows they used, the concrete walls that they had, the styrofoam with the rebar in it, and they pour concrete in there, poured in place. So this house was really incredibly well built to survive that. And even when you plan those things, I still had somebody tell me, well, I wouldn't want to be the last house standing because I wouldn't have any neighbors. I looked at this guy like, are you a moron? So everybody's running into the fire, so you're going in the fire with them because you don't want to be alone. How about being the last guy? Your stuff is safe, and it's tragic for everybody else, but at least you're safe and your stuff is, and you'll have the beach to yourself. Why would you do a lesser standard because everybody else is?
Yeah.
And that's a mentality we have to fight. I want to do better than everybody else. I don't want to just be mediocre because everyone else chooses that.
Wow. Oh, yeah, that's amazing. But so really the solution is just exceed the codes, just do better, and think about what sort of environment you're in and what disasters are most likely to come your way, and just exceed the code. That's really
exactly. And you can get a lot of that information. We have it on our website, the lasthousestanding.org. There's a resources page on there, and you can go to FEMA and other resources and find out what the hazards are where you live, and see how your house might be built to survive them. And the problem is people go, well, if they're building it to code, it has to be safe. I guarantee you they're not looking out for us the way we need to look out for ourselves. So let's stop rewarding crap. You know, and the problem is the real estate market is so hot right now in this country and places that if I see a house that's not safe, but it's kind of got the eye candy and it's in a nice area, if I don't buy it, somebody else is. So then you have the pressure to ignore the problems to get into that house because you're desperate to have a place. The problem is the things that are wrong when you're buying it aren't going to just get better.
No.
And you're rewarding some builder for doing a mediocre job. And it's now your problem. It's not their problem. When your house washes away, they're not coming. It's all you. And so we, as the people that are inhabiting these places, we have to demand more. We have to look out for ourselves because there's no way a bunch of politicians are going to sit around and go, hey, let's make that neighborhood safer. I mean, it happens. It does happen. It happened in Moore, but it took 4 major tornadoes. You know, we'll all be in the ground by the time those things change. Where I live, there's a lot of people that do a great job of evacuating and disaster management, but they're not preventing the damage from the disaster. We're not even close to ready. If a major hurricane hit Tampa, half of this place would get wiped out too. It's just not built for it. Yeah.
I have a lot of friends in Tampa too, so I'm going to pray for that not happening. But but the thing is, really, it's house prices are going up. I don't know what they're doing over there, but they're just doubling, and like it's insane how much a house has gone up in the last even 5 years, you know. And so it's getting to a point where it's kind of like I can barely afford even the minimum of houses, you know. So when you say we've got to do better and we've got to exceed the code, you know, really we're living on hope because we can't afford. Most people can't afford to exceed it. And I know the reality is you can't afford not to, you know, if something happens. But so we're really just living on hope and a wing and a prayer, aren't we? And just praying to God that nothing ever comes our way.
That's a line in the film from Joseph Barbera who goes, hope is not a strategy. You know, and it's a great line. It's on our poster. Because if you think about it, hope's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to solve the problem. It's not going to save you. And I understand that people don't have the money to do certain things. Well, then that's where you better make sure if I'm going to buy this piece of garbage that I better have insurance for it.
Yeah.
And I better have a way of being as safe as possible because I am just rolling the dice that it's going to be okay. And what the problem is, what you really need to do, if you did a spreadsheet, a cost analysis of what your risk is and what it's going to cost, the intangibles of the downside, you can't calculate. Being displaced, not having clothes, food, water, not having a place to a roof over your head that's not leaking for months at a time, no air conditioning for months at a time. You can't put a price on those. But if you did come up with a figure, then it was like, oh, wow. So if I don't get the granite countertops, but I actually have them put better hurricane brackets in and better windows, I might be okay. Yeah, make sure your door doesn't blow in. You can get as something as this fabric, a Kevlar fabric you can put over your front door that can stop your front door from blowing in or your back door. That could be the difference between your house falling apart or not in a major storm. So you get an inspector in, you have them look at it, and not the inspector that is just going to come out and go, yeah, it looks pretty good. Just have them fix that shingle on the roof and
give us me money.
Plug sockets loose. Yeah. You want somebody that knows how to look for those kind of problems, and you can find them by talking to people. Every community has them. And give it a good inspection and know what your risks are, because gosh, when you hear people say, yeah, my roof was leaking, a guy came by and put a tarp on it and charged me $10,000 for that. You know, disaster brings out the heroes and the first responders and the people that save everybody, but it also brings out the dirtbags and the thieves and the crooks. We met some of them making our film, and they were ripping people off for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's horrible. So you're already a victim, and now you're getting victimized again by cockroaches that are just trying to pick at you. And it takes a bad situation and makes it worse. It's getting really dark here, but it's the reality. Those are the things you have to think about. Yeah.
Oh, it is a reality, and those people are out there. They prey on people who are devastated, who are victims, who are feeling helpless and hopeless, and they bloody prey on them. Their opportunity. Cockroach is kind of a little bit nice, actually. I think that's Dirty, rotten,
Yeah.
scumbag bastards, I reckon. But anyway.
Well, if you ever go out at night, this is what I think of after a disaster as, if you were out in a field or out in a city and you put a bright light on in the middle of the night in an area of complete darkness, the bugs and the things that would come crawling out of the woodwork would just make you sick. And that's what happens after disasters.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I've heard stories from people that say they signed over their insurance to a contractor who was going to fix their house, never saw him again.
Yeah.
And now that guy controls their insurance money. So now we're talking about insurance, which is hard enough to get those guys to pay. And now you have to deal with a crooked contractor that got to them first. So I just feel so bad for those people. Just heartbreaking stories that if you can do everything you can to avoid being a victim, you're better off.
Yep. No, 100%. And I also think that, going one step back is that you said climate change is making it worse. And I've heard that. I do climate change workshops all around the world. I know nothing about climate change. I know it's an issue. I know it's a problem. I support people, climate change groups to get projects off the bench, so that they can actually start addressing some of the climate change issues. So if we, yes, we're looking at houses, and yes, we're saying what can we do better, but if we also start looking at what can we do better for the world, for the planet, for humanity, animals, the planet, the climate, if we actually start to become more proactive in that space, it's not going to, like, we've got some chance of we're never going to reverse it properly because we've screwed it up to such a damn horrible point, but we've got some chance of slowing it down and pulling it back, and just not ripping the carpet out from under us in 2 years' time. We need to be more focused on how we're treating the place as well.
Well, one of the scientists in our film, Jennifer Francis, said we can't stop it, but we can slow it down.
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to think about it. Unfortunately, people talk about doing things in that what they think is going to save the climate, but it actually uses more resources in a different way. And all that stuff, I leave that to smarter people to figure out. Just tell me what to do, and I'll try to do a better job on my end.
Yeah.
That's still not going to help the person buying a house or building a house right now.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you in your immediate space. It's more of a forward thinking, let's protect the world for our children and our grandchildren. And I think that's great. I'm never going to knock that. But that's not going to save your house. That's not going to save your possessions and everything you have right now. You can't wait. If your hope, which hope is not a strategy, if your hope is, well, they're going to fix climate change, so I'll be fine here, that's not going to work out too well for you.
No. But it still comes under that whole principle, which I live by, is I'm going to plant a tree today that I'll never sit under the shade of, and I really think that when you're talking about, it might help our children, but why the hell wouldn't we be doing that? Why the hell wouldn't we be saying, well, I don't want anyone else to go, I don't want anyone else to suffer. So why don't I just do my little extra bit now so that the future can be better? And I might lose my house, but I damn well don't want the kids to lose theirs. So there's so much to be done, and it's, I so applaud you for having these films that really, and it's bringing the elephant into the room and saying, okay, guys, there's an elephant in the room and we actually all have to look at it and deal with it and stop burying our heads in the sand. But I love that you've done that, but there's no but. So what is the future for Move the World Films? Where are we going? Where are we heading? Or is that a deep, dark secret?
Well, one of my ideas is a deep, dark secret. There's a book I'm working on that has nothing to do with this stuff, and I can't talk about that either. So I do have they're all top secret, like anybody's really sitting around waiting for this stuff. You just hope you get an idea out before somebody else does it. The thing about films is, if there's another film about The Last House Standing, I welcome it, but there's some ideas you really don't want somebody to do first. Yeah. But I'm working on a bunch of different things, always working it. And then, we may do more with the concept of The Last House Standing too. So the wheels are always turning. So
we'll keep the lead on the deep, dark secret box, but there's your wheels are always turning, and we can expect more great films from Move the World Films, and we can expect a book. And who knows if that's going to be full of impact and dark secrets, but It's
And
coming.
we've started a Move the World podcast.
Oh, fantastic.
Where we try to talk to people that are doing something in their life or in their job to help move the world.
Yeah.
And we interview them in the podcast. It's new. It's on our website, movetheworldfilms.org. We've got 4 episodes. You probably have 1,000, so I'm not in your league yet, but
only 70.
someday.
No, I'm only in my 80s. So
It's tough. I mean, it's tough everybody's doing a podcast, right? But what makes it good? People like you and they want to watch your podcast or listen to it. And that's what I'm hoping to do with ours. So, it's an uphill climb like anything, but it's been fun so far.
It's just getting started. And that's what Get Off the Bench is about. It's about taking that first step and just, I love pushing people off the damn bench. Just get off and pick yourself up. And when you pick yourself up, there you go. Look, you've already started, that sort of thing. And I think that podcasts are, they're becoming they're more popular. Everyone's listening to them. But what I like is, and there's billions out there or millions out there, but I like them because you can have great conversation with great people and bring people to the table that people would never have ever met, or would ever have known about, and it's so exciting listening to other people's stories and their journeys and getting little tips and ideas. And it just, I don't know, I really love podcasts, really love them. I don't have enough time to listen to tons of them, but
I know there aren't enough hours in a day. So you hope when you make one that you just carve out a little time in somebody's day that they'll listen to yours.
Yeah, that's right. I have regular listeners and they always message me, oh, that was great. I just listened to George, and oh my God, I've got to fix my back door,
Hey, then we will have moved the world. If one person fixes their door after this podcast, we've done something.
That's right. That's fantastic. I love it. Now, speaking of Get Off the Bench and moving the world and all that sort of stuff, this podcast is to inspire people to, take that shove, get off the bench, take some action. What advice do you have to anybody who might have a passion and skills like yours in the arts, so maybe film, art, music, all that sort of stuff, but doesn't quite know how they could make a difference with it? What advice would you give them?
To go for it and get something done. A lot of people I know sit around and they go, God, I thought about doing that. Or, yeah, I thought that seems like an interesting, just do it. You may have nobody that watches, you may have nobody that listens, but then one person finds it, and then another, and then it just grows and it takes off from that point on. And that's the beauty of it. You never know how many people are going to see your film. And then we have a screening where 400 people show up. Yeah. And it's just, you get surprised by those moments. So I would say don't pass it by and not do it. Yeah. It's easy to figure out how to not do something. It takes more effort to do it, and you got to just go for it.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And I think that, it's when I started this podcast too, is like, I'm just going to do it whether people are listening or not. I'm not going to control who's listening, but you are surprised. I'm surprised every single week by the messages I get from people that I don't even know where they came from, and I agree with you. And I think that when you've got a message, there's always going to be someone. There's always going to be that one person we talk about who needs to hear your message. So,
yeah, and every now and then I hear about that from Licensed to Parent, and I hear about it from The Last House Standing. And because you're doing something that's not necessarily going to make you rich and, get you things that you might want, those are rewards that are huge. When you hear somebody go, wow, I'm going to get that generator for my house. Wow, I'm going to fix my door, or this or that. Or I realized that the kid next door, something was happening to him, and I stepped up and helped. You just never know where that touch point is going to be. And when you hear about it, it's really an amazing feeling. Yep.
You've impacted somebody's life positively. And that's priceless, actually, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Oh, I have loved this. Absolutely love this. You've gotten off the bench. You've just gone and said, "Hi, here we go, guys." You might have got sacked, but you know what I mean. You said, "No, screw this. If I'm going to get sacked, by God, I'm going to bring that elephant out. I'm going to trample the lot of you bastards." But I reckon I'm so happy that you're raising awareness for things that really do move the world. So I think it's wonderful. Now, where can people find you?
Well, there's two places that they could go. If you go to movetheworldfilms.org, it will connect you to everything. You can see our podcast or listen to them. You can get a link to watch the films. And then we have thelasthousestanding.org that is specifically about that film. And I have a third one. You give people too much, I'll be happy if you go to one website. Licensed2parentmovie.com is where you can get information on that film. So yep. All these things are out there. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me on there. We have Facebook pages, Instagram pages, and all that stuff that I don't really know how to work. But it's all out there. And I love the name of your podcast, because when I used to try to play sports, I was never really a good athlete, but I hated sitting on the bench. I always wanted to try to get in the game. And so I think that's what everybody needs to do. Get off the bench and get in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, I'm going to put all of those links in the show notes anyway, so people will be able to click on them and find you. And I really hope they do, because, even if they watch the trailer, is enough to provoke thoughts about what I could do better. But hopefully people will actually rent your films and give them a good watch. So I'm going to. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I've watched the trailers, and they're both of them have pulled me right into it. So I think
thank you.
You're bloody wonderful. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. And I've absolutely enjoyed every minute of this. It's been brilliant.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. All right, we'll catch you soon. And I might even catch up with you in person in Tampa one day. How would that be?
Let's do it. I know some breweries. We'll meet.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Thanks heaps, George. See ya.